Yo, Fling here with DFS Army, and this is your Week 12 Millie Maker review. We're going to dissect the winning Millie Maker lineup. We're going to look at the top 10 lineups in the Millie Maker. We're going to look at top DFS pros. What are they doing to attack the contest? And then we're going to take a look at the three-game slate this past weekend, get kind of an idea of how to attack a three-game slate because we have the Turkey Day slate, the Millie Maker for that, $5 entry fee coming up on Thursday. So let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so we got the winning Millie Maker lineup from Kitty Plum. Number one, she put 4 lineups in here. I'm assuming it's a female with a name like Kitty Plum, but I mean, maybe I could be wrong. But put 4 lineups here into the Millie Maker, about $80 entry fee, won a millie. So amazing ROI for sure. And this was a Tua stack. Now we had Tua plus David Nchon plus Tyreek Hill. Now it's interesting because a lot of the talk of the slate was, well, if Nchon's going to be chalk, maybe we can get direct leverage by playing a guy like Tua. We play some Tua stacks, Tua to Tyreek Hill, and really you wanted to play Nchon, or at least at the very least, you needed to play Waddle. You could have done without Nchon's 20 score, but you needed Waddle in this spot. So you wanted the Tyreek Hill fade. Tua was the guy you wanted, but you also needed Waddle. So this lineup, QB +2 with 1 running back, 1 wide receiver. We also got Bucky Irving, that tricky backfield of Tampa Bay. We don't know who it's going to be. They're going to ride the hot hand. Well, Bucky Irving was the hot hand in this spot. 27 points, 5,300. And Jacoby Myers. So this was chalk that ended up being pretty good chalk. There was definitely some garbage time scores here for Jacoby Myers, but garbage time is fantasy points as well. So this was a chalk that you definitely wanted to eat. Sutton had a little bit of a better day. We'll see him in a lot of the winning lineups, but he, a lot of top lineups, but he wasn't in this one. And then Jordan Addison, really, this was the top leverage play on the slate. Jalen Waddle was one of the top leverage plays as well, but Jordan Addison, 1% owned, 5,100, 33 points. It was all Jordan Addison from Minnesota. So this is kind of a staple of winning Millie Maker lineups. Seeing this player who's extremely low owned, it's normally wide receiver, by the way, extremely low owned, and ends up hitting 5-6x their salary. And just gotta have it type score from Jordan Addison here. He was the guy you needed. And then Trey McBride. Trey McBride did everything but get in the end zone. That continues to be the theme with him. And I guess he was kind of direct leverage off of a lot of the chalk in that game. The James Connors, the Metcalf to JSN. He definitely outscored all of them and was really the only guy that you wanted from that game. Besides, the defense, which he stacked here as well. So we got a nice secondary stack. Jahmyr Gibbs was in a great spot, and it was kind of aided by David Montgomery getting hurt as well. So he finishes with 24 points. Whole lineup, 233 points. Pretty good. We had, I believe it was week 10, we had an extremely low scoring week, 178 points. But if you take out that week, over the last month of the season, we've had about 242 point average to win the Millie Maker. So more normalcy 3 out of the past 4 weeks than massive outliers like we've had to start the year. And then, it's contrarian. One of the more contrarian lineups we've seen this year, 81%. And it's kind of surprising to me. All the salary was not used here, 49.6. Pretty rare to leave that much salary on the table. But really good lineup there. Let's kind of take a look at second place real quick. Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin. That was another staple. Like I said, Cortland Sutton actually outscored Jacoby Myers. He was in a lot of the top lineups. And another big day for Jonnu. So really, you could have would have outscored the Tua Nchon Waddle stack if you just would have had Tua plus Waddle and Jonnu and maybe, like Josh Jacobs. That certainly would have massively outscored the first lineup. But it just goes to show that even though that lineup ended up winning it all, there definitely were more paths to a higher score. And that's something that we have to keep in mind when you're thinking about ways to build. So pretty good lineup with Terry McLaurin. And, that was a late touchdown that definitely propelled this lineup up the leaderboards. And obviously, Josh Jacobs in the afternoon game was the guy that you needed. Pretty good game for Aaron Jones. And yeah, that's a nice stack there, right there. Jordan, Addison, and Aaron Jones. And yeah, first place really kind of crushed though, because I mean, that was 8 points ahead. And you normally see it a lot closer. I wish I win. Definitely won some money in this spot with a Tua to Tyreek Hill plus Jalen Waddle. Now, he or she probably wishes he or she won more, and that would have been not playing Tyreek Hill, only 9 points. I understand the thought process though, just fully fading H on in this spot and going with the passing game, but you needed Waddle and Johnu, not Waddle and Tyreek Hill. TJ Hawkinson also had a really solid day. So Jay Hilgers, and shout out to Bobby Wow on Tournament Tactics. I know he's a Bears fan, but he's almost always right when he has these calls. And this was Caleb Williams to DJ Moore. I think we'll see in some of these other lineups like Caleb Williams to DJ Moore, also Keenan Allen. So that was a high scoring one as well. So yeah, Jay Hilgers got a couple lineups here in the, let's see, this one was fourth. Two lineups in the top 10. Wow. Really, really good stuff. So yeah, 25K here and at 10K there as well, both on Caleb Williams lineups. This one was just, and it looks like they were just +1, except this one was +2. This one was 5K as well. So three lineups in the top 25 just really running hot for Jay Hilgers. In fact, we might have to hop into the MME strategy as far as exposures go a little bit here, see what Jay Hilgers 5 did overall as far as exposures, but really running hot with the Caleb Williams. Also had some Bucky Irving and Tony Pollard, really good running back pairing there on the slate. JSN, McBride, and Jacob. So really nailed the running backs. Just what kind of was let down here by both Lamb and JSN, but everywhere else was Flames. And let's see, 1, 2, 3. Let's take a look at the top 5 at least. And we had, like I said, Caleb Williams was pretty prevalent in the top 10 in a lot of contests. Caleb Williams to DJ Moore to Keenan Allen and Josh Jacobs, obviously the top guy there, John Hawkinson and Trey McBride. So this one had Caleb Williams +2 with a bring back of TJ Hawkinson. Also had Nico Collins. Nico Collins had a big touchdown called back. That would have been, 30-point day from him. So tilting. It's so tilting when you make calls like that. Like Nico Collins is my guy on this slate. I want to be over the field on him. And the penalty didn't have anything to do with the touchdown, by the way. It just called back a touchdown. That's twice in 2 weeks he's had that happen to him. So just bad luck there. Pretty tilting. And this had a Josh Jacobs and Green Bay stack. But yeah, so pretty good stuff there. Let's kind of take a look at the exposures of Jay Hilgers. Actually didn't plan on doing this, but we're just going to run with it. Just kind of see where he was at. So Gino, Tua, Caleb, Stroud were his top exposure guys. And really, those were all over 10%. Nobody below that. So kind of decided those were going to be his or her quarterbacks. And, nailed it on the Caleb's call. Also nailed it on the Tua call. But bombed on Gino and CJ Stroud. And yeah, did really well with the running backs here. You could see that's how Jay Hilgers was able to, put so many lineups on the top 25. H-on, good enough, 20 points, right? Bucky Irving, 29% exposure, so +20 positive leverage. Same on Abdullah, +27 positive leverage on Jacobs, who was the top running back on the slate. Mir Abdullah did pretty well too at only 4,300. And it was a little under on Brian Robinson and was way under Faded Hunt. So that is really what you wanted to do on this slate, was be under on those guys, because they certainly were chalk failing. Now, Brian Robinson Jr., he got hurt. So we can't really, say it was such a bad play or anything, because could have been a great play, but he got hurt like right in the beginning of the game. He came back in and then left pretty early, so he hardly played. Ridley, decent. Jacoby Myers. So, yeah, you see just really nailing it on all the exposures, making a ton of really good calls. Um, yeah, minus Justin Jefferson, Jaden Reed, CD Lamb. But, these weren't terrible calls. DJ Moore was a great one. Keenan Allen was a good one. Nico, Jacoby, Ridley. So a lot of good calls. Not really making any that burns you. Was under on Marvin Harrison Jr. That was a good fade. Was just slightly under on Sutton, so not enough that it burns you. And yeah, CD Lamb didn't do nearly enough. And then Justin Jefferson, only 12% though. So that was a terrible like positive leverage, but because it was only 12%, you're playing 150, it doesn't really matter. And then Trey McBride, so nailed that positive leverage just over on Kelsey, so that didn't hurt you much. A little bit of positive leverage on Janu, almost even with the field on Schoonmaker, faded Laporta. So overall, you can see why he was able to put so many lineups in the top 150 or in the top 25, just because so many good calls. So many good calls. So really good stuff. I do want to take a look at a couple DFS pros just because they've been doing so well and knock them down a little bit. Giant Squid did not have the best week, but still like to get an idea of kind of what the thought process was for Giant Squid here. So top lineup was Tua Hill, to Janu. So kind of as we were talking about, fade the H on play, the chalk, but play the wide receivers. Now, if this is Waddle, he scored 189 points here, but if this Waddle versus Hill probably gets into a positive ROI day, doesn't win it, not with a 3 from Ramondre Stevenson, but other than that, it's almost like the perfect call across the rest of the lineup. Now, Giant Squid normally plays, we'll look at exposures here real quick. Normally plays a lot of quarterbacks. So, doesn't really go really high on anyone, like never over 20% on any one quarterback. Anthony Richardson was the highest and played Darnold, Stroud, Gino, Tua, Jaden. So, had some of what you needed, but overall wasn't the best spot. And what I found is surprising is we're going to see here and kind of uncharacteristic from Giant Squid is basically faded Bo Nix, but had a lot of Vele and Cortland Sutton. So 20% Sutton, even with the field, 20% Vele, so positive leverage. And to me, it's just kind of one of those things where, probably plays without setting a lot of rules. But when you look at like your lineups after the optimizer is spitting them out, and you got a lot of the receivers, but you don't have the quarterback, and the quarterback's not expensive, and neither are the receivers. It's just so I just found that just to be a little bit surprising there. And no, obviously no quarterback that was really high, like I said. At running backs, faded a lot of the chalk, or was at least under on Brian Robinson Jr., under on Kareem Hunt, and under on Achon. And unless they're kind of a core for you, I really like not being over the field and just being slightly under. Just studying DFS Pro, seeing them do this, it seems to help more times than not. Now, this is not a slate where Giant Squid obviously did very well, but we've seen Giant Squid over and over in the Millie Maker this year. He's won it this year and consistently, placing in the top 10. So I like to look at that and seeing, what are they doing with the chalk? I liked the mix and fade. That was a good one. Was there on that a little bit of Gibbs, and I would say more so than normal. His running back pool was quite small this week, so made some good calls with Pollard, Abdullah, Jacobs. You know, I understand the McCaffrey play. Didn't have a ton of McCaffrey, but I understood this because you would think that if they were going to be competitive, they were going to run the crap out of the ball, and that would bode well for Christian McCaffrey getting a lot of opportunities. But he just doesn't look the same this year, at least thus far. And then yeah, wide receivers. So no one high. Played a lot of wide receivers. I counted 31 wide receivers. Um, was under on Hill, so that was a good one. Was slightly under on Amon Ra, so that helped a little bit because he did not have the best day. It's basically even on JSN, Cortland Sutton, who were some of the chalk pieces over on Myers. So that ended up being a good call. Over on Myers, over on Douglas, over on Vele, um, over on Jennings. So wasn't too worried about Brandon Allen there. Like the Bears receivers as well. So Adunze, DJ Moore. In fact, where was he on Keenan Allen? Did you have any Keenan Allen? DJ Moore, Adunze. Looks like he fully faded Keenan Allen. Did have some DJ Moore and Adunze and 4% Caleb Williams. So not a lot of Caleb Williams either. Kind of like with Bo Nix, but had quite a bit more Caleb than Nix because had basically no Nix. And then Bowers and TJ Hawkinson. And Bowers failed against Denver this time around. TJ Hawkinson had a great game and was basically even with the field on Luke Schoonmaker. I love Schoon. He was a core for me this week, and honestly, I just wish I had more of him. I think if you played a lot of double tight end on this slate and you basically had Schoon as a core, I think there was some real paths to having a really good day because 2,500 player scores 15. That's 6x. That's definitely pretty good. But Hishbu, we're going to look at him next, and then we're going to look at the 3-game slate real quick, and we'll just go through Hishbu real fast because Hishbu had a good day, and he plays top 50 in the Millie, and good player. Definitely has won it before, and kind of as we started this out, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. So we're seeing a lot of the Bear stack. And by the way, if you guys like this kind of content, hit that like button. Let me know. Did you play the Millie Maker? How'd it go for you? Are you excited for the Millie Maker on Thursday, the $5 Turkey Day Millie Maker? It's gonna be like 500,000 entries. So it's gonna be really hard to win, but get weird with it. It's $5. Have fun with it. Let's fade the chalk for sure with that many people in the contest. So this was a Williams double stack. Also had Jacobs, Pollard, Sutton, Kelsey, and Walker. So really good stuff. Just kind of burned by Kelsey and Kenneth Walker here. 205 points. Now, HPU, I saw a lot of QB +1 and QB +2. So we saw the last one, and this one was just with DJ Moore. And it's tough because a lot of these top lineups, like the top two at least, nailed every spot but the last two. And that's kind of it. You got to hit 9 legs of a parlay to win the Millie Maker, essentially. And even then, sometimes it might do it because you hit 9 legs and someone else hits 9 legs as well, and they outscore you. It's kind of how it goes. But let's see Hishbu's exposures here real quick, and then we'll move it along. Now, the reason I like to show Hishbu after we just showed Giant Squid is the old saying goes, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. Giant Squid not going really high on any quarterback. Hishbu, the opposite. A third of his lineups are Bo Nix here. And then, almost 20% of that is Jaden Daniels, right? So we're talking over half of the lineups are 2 quarterbacks. Drake May and Anthony Richardson are next at 10 and 12%. So small QB pool. All the rest of these guys are 5% or under, and it's a small pool. We're talking 5, a little over 10. Now, Nix and Daniels were two guys you definitely wanted to be on. And Hishbu also nailed the Jacobs play, Abdullah, Pollard. So top three right there. Some really good plays. Bad on Mixon, bad on Connor, positive leverage there. Same with McCaffrey. Was a little over on Bucky Irving. So that is certainly a plus. Now, under on H-on, Brian Robinson, slightly under. I mean, not much. And same with Kareem Hunt, but it's kind of like I was just saying before. These are the chalk. It's like I'm not going to get a lot of leverage playing the chalk, and I don't want to full fade it because they're chalk for a good reason, right? But let me just be under a little bit because that's the best way to leverage the field is not to be way over on these guys because so many of the field is already playing them. But actually just being under on these guys a little bit. And then obviously a ton of Sutton and Vele, specifically Sutton, but it makes sense with having 36% Knicks. And then, just Vele was more tied to the Knicks lineup, whereas Sutton, was clearly let run in a lot of the other non-Knicks lineups. And then Jacoby Myers, CD Lamb. So these guys were all over 30%. We got one guy 60%. We definitely did not see that with Giant Squid. So he faded Tyreek Hill, faded JSN, faded Metcalf. And, I think specifically at wide receiver, like it's really good to have some fades at wide receiver. I think that's just a really good way to play every slate. Like, who are going to be my fades? Who am I fading? And not just letting your optimizer do its thing because you have to think about, strategic fades. And if, this guy is going to be chalk and I fade this guy and he bombs, that I'm in a good spot. And if he goes off, then I'm done. But the fastest way to the top is by that fade. Now Kelsey and Hunter Henry. So didn't nail the tight ends at all, and good defenses there. Tampa, Houston, Chicago, specifically Tampa against Tommy Cutlets. I like that. So yeah, that's going to do it for that part. Let's go ahead and look at the 3-game slate. I wanted to peep at this because, like I said, we got the Millie Maker for Thanksgiving, and it's 3 games, $5 entry fee. So some people are gonna MME it. I don't know. I haven't decided if I'm gonna MME it yet, but we'll see kind of what won first. This was 100K to first contest. So we'll take a look at what won first place in this. Of course, this happens every time I switch over to the 3-game slate. All right. Yeah, but this kind of, because not everyone always plays these small slates. So I like to look at this and just kind of remind us of, the different types of builds that win these contests, and how we need to be thinking. Now, it's pretty crazy that only 233 score won the Millie Maker to 10 games. And then we go down to 3 games, and one of them completely bombs, and we still have a score of 204. So sometimes I think there is more to be said about focusing on a less of a player pool. So Bo Nix stacked to Cortland Sutton with Amir Abdullah and Jacoby Myers bring back. So this is one of those things, for example, where you don't want to play with a bunch of rules. You don't want to play with click, like for example, DFS Army, we have the optimizer where you can click disallow more than one pass catcher without the quarterback in the lineup. You wouldn't want to click that for a contest like this, for example. You wouldn't want to, have 0 players against defense because we often see players against the defense, like Trey McBride right here going against Seattle D. So that is something to keep in mind. Typically, I think you want to allow for 3 to 4 players against the defense. So just some rules to keep in mind. Double running back from the same game, that's definitely fine. We didn't see it in this winning lineup, but it happens a lot. Double tight end, I would very much be letting that ride. I would not put restrictions on that. We see double tight end win these a lot, so just some things to keep in mind. But yeah, this was a Bo Nix stack +1 and then had two bringbacks, and then we had Josh Jacobs as a one-off, JSN, Kenneth Walker, Seattle D, and Trey McBride from that other game. Now, and that's kind of how we see differences between the main slate and the smaller slate, right? These guys that you didn't need in the main slate, you're going to need them in the smaller slate. So I do think it's more important, though, to think about fading guys that are chalk. Like that is even more important on a smaller slate because you gain so much leverage on the field. Like, let's say, I think Christian McCaffrey, for example, Christian McCaffrey was probably, we can look at some of these lineups. I'm guessing we'll see him here in a little bit, and he's probably like 40 to 60% owned. And so he didn't have a good day. If like you full faded Christian McCaffrey, you gain more leverage on the field in a smaller 3 game slate like this than you would in a 10 game slate, for example. So that's something to think about. Obviously, that was the winning lineup here. We could take a look at second place. It was similar. Bo Nix to Sutton, Jacoby Myers, and Amir Abdullah. Walker, as well as JSN, Jacobs, McBride. In fact, 196. So, yeah, it was about 10 points behind. So, we'll take a look at third place. So, yeah, it was Cortland Sutton with Nix and the two bringbacks. And basically, all the same guys are. I think these guys both actually tied for second place. So how big of a tie was this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-way tie for second place. And then we're going to go to Need Lunch Money. And this is perfect because we are going to jump into Need Lunch Money's MME strategy real quick. We got Need Lunch Money and Hishbu. So Need Lunch Money is one of the top DFS pros. We already looked at Hishbu, kind of had an idea of how he attacked the slate. But we will look into Need Lunch Money real quick here. So this was Nix again to Sutton, to Jacoby Myers, to Amir Abdullah. So those were the guys that you really needed. Obviously, Walker with 13 points to JSN 19. And this one had Green Bay defense. So I do think that was one of the differences here. And actually, they all tied. These all tied. That's crazy. I've never seen a tie that wild for second place with first place being contrarian. What was so different? So I think what was so different about first place's lineup was just Seattle D. That was it. Everyone else played Green Bay D. Now, Green Bay D was 32% owned. Seattle D was 5% owned. Why were they 5%? That's nuts to me. I personally, and that's another thing, when I play these small slates, I like to get exposure to every single defense because there's always one defense that you had to have, right? And I want to try to be like even with the field on all the lower owned guys. And it's kind of like looking at the running backs. Like I want exposure to that defense. If it's a chalk defense, I want exposure to it. But I also don't want to like be even with the field or over the field because those defenses fail so often and you really gain no leverage by having that defense. You gain leverage by fading it. Like this player did here with the 5% owned defense, which was really the difference between $100,000 and a massive tie. That's nuts. But we're gonna look at Need Lunch Money's like overall exposures. So Gino, and this was a little surprising to me. He was like, I'm playing all the quarterbacks, and really, but decided one spot was where he wanted to go, and that spot failed, and he's still tied for second place. So you don't have to do perfect. Like that's what's great about these smaller slates. On a main slate, you almost have to be perfect. Like you have to have made so many good calls, like we saw with I think it was Hishboot, but no, it was Hilger's 5+ player, almost nailed every single call, right? And put 3 lineups in the top 25. But on these smaller slates like this, you can you can have such a horrible decision to have Geno as your top exposure quarterback, and you could still tie for second place and have like a positive ROI day, or even win the tournament with just that one lucky lineup. So it's way different. Played a little bit of everyone. Second highest was obviously Knicks, so a good amount of Knicks, but was even under the field there. Faded Kyler, which was good. Now we'll see what he did at running back. So this is what was the difference maker. Now, yeah, as we said, Christian McCaffrey 41%. So if you full faded Christian McCaffrey in the spot, you thought backup quarterback on the road, going against a good Green Bay team, that game's going to get away from them. This is a fade spot for me. Probably could have been the difference between banking the slate or not banking the slate. But the Josh Jacobs play was fabulous. Really probably saved the day. Amir Abdullah being over the field there, really good. Kenneth Walker and not having any of the Denver D. So, or Denver running backs, that really helps because that was just a complete disaster. And then, yeah, way over on Myers, had some Tucker, which was a pretty decent play, especially on a small game slate. Even on Cortland Sutton. So, pulling the right levers. Faded Harrison, that was a good fade. Under on JSN, under on Metcalf. So, I do find that surprising. Had so much Geno. We're talking 32% Geno. So I'm guessing he probably stacked Geno with Walker in a lot of these lineups. And then under on Metcalf, under on JSN, but did have like enough exposure to these guys. I'm guessing maybe had him stacked with the tight end too. Barner. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. Because you would have expected more exposure to JSN and Metcalf with having 32% Geno. But with Fant being out, really viewed that as a potential leverage spot. And just even with the Broncos wide receivers, it looks like. So too much Bowers, but had some Barner, had some McBride, and faded McBride. So, not really the best day for need lunch money in this contest, but had a couple lineups that really got there. And it was, every single one of them, if you look at it, it was Josh Jacobs and Amir Abdullah and Jacoby Myers. So couldn't get the quarterback right. Had enough of Trey McBride in these top lineups. Trey McBride had Jacoby Myers, had Amir Abdullah, and obviously it was that one hit that certainly helped. And that's another thing I just want to point out before we finish here. These are top DFS pros, and they are not being super, super unique. And when there's only 3 games on the slate, you're not going to have like 140 out of 150 unique. If you do, you're probably playing way too contrarian, and you're probably going to have no chance of really winning that slate. So just keep that in mind. If about half of your lineups are duplicated, well, that's half that still aren't duplicated, and you still have a really good chance to win the tournament. But yeah, 3-game slate duplicates, they're going to happen. They're definitely going to happen. And specifically with a contest of 500,000, I would look for ways to get different, but don't be obsessed about getting so different that you're making low EV lineups. Just keep that in mind. As we saw here, the top one that had the solo bank, still had only 60 unique lineups out of 150. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this weekend. By the way, before I finish, we got a huge promo going on right now at DFS Army. In fact, we had another big win over the weekend. College football, 50,000. Put 2 lineups in the top 5 for a total of 57,000. And guys, it's Thanksgiving, and that means it's Black Friday. So right now we're doing a Black Friday promotion, 50% off your first month of VIP. Use code BF2024 and at checkout. I will put the link in the video description. You could join us. This gives you access to all the sports. We have NBA, NHL going on right now, in addition to NFL, which will be over before we know it. College football, which you just saw the takedown for. All the sports, all the tools as well. The Discord community. So BF 2024 at checkout. That's going to do it for this episode. We will see you next time on another week in review. Take care, everyone. Sheesh.